Many of you probably know about the Great Olentangy River that runs along the west of Ohio State's campus. However, many of you may not know that the river is only as great as it is now due to the efforts of a major dam removal and restoration project. For over 70 years, the Olentangy was more of a pool of water rather than a flowing river due to the Fifth Avenue Dam. This dam trapped sediments as well as pollutants from urban and agricultural runoff, making an overall poor ecosystem. In 2012, the dam was removed, and the flow and riparian zone of the Olentangy was restored through the creation of large wetlands, riffles, and scour pools. The restoration of the Olentangy River, however, still continues to be impacted by invasive species and runoff pollution. It became clear that the Olentangy River needed to be restored when high sediment and nutrient loads had been consistently found in the river. The Ohio EPA has been documenting issues in the Olentangy River watershed since 1999. These issues are caused by the erosion of stream banks and a lack of vegetation to absorb nutrients from fertilizer runoff before it makes it to the waterway. The Olentangy River is especially susceptible to these issues because it is surrounded by urban areas. Impermeable surfaces such as buildings, roads, and parking lots don't allow nutrients that's picked up in water to flow through the soil before it reaches the river. Storm drains and other flood control infrastructures dump the water that is run off of roads directly into the river without any sort of filtration, and the river itself has been greatly modified and channelized due to increased human development in central Ohio. The Ohio EPA found that fish and macroinvertebrate communities weren't meeting the state standards in the Olentangy River watershed because of the poor water quality. The biological integrity of these communities was very low by 2007, with the site condition labeled as relatively poor. Many different types of fish rely on the river, including a few threatened species. These include the blue-breasted and spotted darters and the purple warty-back mussel. Without a suitable habitat and good quality water in the river, these species could continue to decline. In addition to aquatic biota, the river and its surrounding riparian zone host a variety of threatened birds and other wildlife. The Olentangy also provides water for industrial and agricultural purposes, and without the constant source of fresh water, central Ohio would be very different. The river is also an important recreational resource with a bike path, parks, and public green space available for residents of Columbus, Ohio to enjoy. Because of how much reliance there is on the Olentangy, it is clear that something needs to be done to protect everything and everyone that depends on the river. In order to solve these problems, we need to set reasonable goals for restoration of the site. In the long term, creating a large, diverse riparian zone around the entire length of the river will greatly improve the water quality. It is also important to cultivate public support and funding for the continued expansion of the riparian zone and monitoring of the river. Creating public interest and investment in the well-being of the river will allow the public to better enjoy the river and understand restoration efforts happening on the river. Medium-term goals to help the river include encouraging cover cropping throughout the entire Olentangy River watershed and regulating non-point sources of pollution, especially fertilizer and road salt. In the short term, reducing non-native species, allowing vegetation to grow back in the existing riparian zones, and creating riffles and pools will get restoration started and set the river on a path to becoming healthier. These short-term goals were created using the SMART method, meaning they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. River restoration projects aren't exclusive to the Olentangy River. The Cuyahoga River, which is a part of the Cuyahoga National Park in northeast Ohio, has undergone and continues to undergo river renewal. Sections of the Cuyahoga River and the techniques that have been used to restore them include removing invasive flora species in the area and replanting native species, creating small wetlands to retain stormwater, and dam removal to improve water quality. These techniques can be learned from and in turn used in similar restoration sites like the Olentangy. Restoration techniques for the issues the Olentangy River faces include removing invasive species, in particular garlic mustard. Despite garlic mustard being difficult to get rid of, continual hand pulling during its flowering season is effective, as well as planting fast-growing native species in its place. Additionally, the placement and care of freshwater mussels into the river will improve the river's water quality, as well as easing nutrient overload from fertilizer runoff. Another restoration technique includes widening and increasing depth of the river to increase water flow and decrease the buildup of sediment. Lastly, expanding the riparian zones, which is the area between a body of water and land, will allow for an increased area for native flora and fauna, while also acting as a buffer to aid in maintaining a good water quality. These goals aim to restore the site using an adaptive restoration approach. The establishment of goals also allows for actions to be identified and for treatments for the site to be selected. This is accomplished by not following a textbook approach to restoration, but instead looking at reference sites and deciding on techniques that would best benefit our specific restoration site. Monitoring of the site and in turn adapting to results is another aspect of adaptive restoration that is vital to success. There is no surefire way to restore an ecosystem, but with a proper approach, sites such as the Olentangy River have a bright future ahead of them.